He wasn't just a Navy SEAL. He was a sniper feared by every enemy who heard his name. One shot, one breath, and the battlefield always fell silent. But on this mission, his greatest threat wasn't distance. It was the darkness hiding inside the mountains, waiting for him and his loyal K-9, a kidnapped woman, a hidden enemy, and a secret someone would kill to protect. Every step dragged him deeper into a trap designed just for him. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from, and subscribe for more stories of faith, courage, and the miracles God hides in the darkest places. The forest lay in a breathless stillness as evening folded over the towering pines. Ethan Walker had chosen this hidden pocket of Sierra Nevada intentionally, a place where the world seemed distant enough for secrets to survive the night. The air bit faintly at his skin, but he ignored it, focusing instead on the quiet pulse in the earth, an instinct he had developed after too many operations gone sideways. Tonight was no different, a mission sealed under the label Eyes Only, with no support teams, no backup frequencies, no off-ramps if things went wrong. Just him, a silent mountain range, and the dog who had saved him more times than he could count. Rex lay beside the small fire, not asleep, not resting, but watching. The dog's ears twitched every so often as if listening to things Ethan couldn't yet hear. It wasn't unusual. Rex had always sensed danger a few seconds before any human could. Ethan didn't need to look at him to know his companion was uneasy. The night pressed in closer, shadows shifting like they had a mind of their own. Ethan fed another small stick into the flames, keeping the fire low so it wouldn't give away their location. The mission brief replayed in his head, looping like a recording he couldn't turn off. Find Emma Davis, alive if possible. Confirm the existence of a foreign mercenary cell rumored to be moving sensitive information through the area. Locate the source of an unidentified encrypted signal. Destroy anything that could compromise national security. The kind of assignment they gave to someone they trusted beyond protocol. Someone they expected not to come back unless the job was done. He exhaled slowly. That truth didn't scare him anymore. Too much had already been taken. Friends buried under desert sands, promises broken by governments, shifting agendas, and a silence inside him that grew louder after every mission. Yet this time, the stakes were different. A civilian was missing, and not just a civilian. Emma had once worked on a humanitarian project Ethan had protected overseas. He remembered her quiet determination, her ability to face chaos without flinching. If she had been taken, it meant someone wanted to break more than protocol. Rex nudged his arm gently, sensing the shift in Ethan's thoughts. "I know," Ethan murmured. "We move at dawn. We'll find her." He leaned back against his pack, letting the fire crackle in the stillness. The forest smelled of pine, cold soil, and distant snow. For a moment, he allowed himself to close his eyes, not to sleep, but to listen. Every mission had a rhythm, a pattern, a heartbeat. But tonight, something felt out of tune, like a note played a fraction too sharp. It started with a rustle, soft, barely there. Ethan's eyes snapped open. Rex lifted his head at the same instant, his low growl deep and steady. The dog's posture changed, muscles tensing in a way that no training manual could replicate. It was instinct, warning, a signal older than language. Ethan didn't move yet. Sometimes the forest made sounds of its own, branches settling, animals returning to their dens. But this was different, too controlled, too deliberate. He extinguished the fire with one swift motion, the darkness swallowing them whole. The hairs on his arms rose as the warmth faded. Rex stepped in front of him, gaze fixed on the tree line. "Talk to me," Ethan whispered. Rex's growl deepened. Then the world exploded. A blast tore through the campsite, deafening, violent, ripping pine needles from the ground as if the forest itself had been struck by lightning. Ethan dove instinctively, years of battlefield reflexes taking over. Shrapnel whistled past his face. The shock wave punched through his chest like a hammer. Rex slammed into him, knocking him sideways just as a second detonation ripped through the space where he had stood. The dog shielded him from the worst of the debris, yelping but refusing to fall. Ethan grabbed Rex's collar and dragged them both behind a fallen trunk. Gunfire erupted from the darkness, short bursts, controlled patterns too precise to be amateurs. Ethan's heart pounded with a cold clarity. Someone had tracked them. The mission was compromised long before he stepped into these woods. He tried reaching for his encrypted communicator, but the device shrieked with static, the screen glitching as if suffocated by interference. A jamming signal, strong, close. "Damn it," he breathed. "They knew we were here." He scanned the tree line through the chaos, muzzle flashes, shadows shifting between trees, footsteps crunching over needles and dead leaves. At least 8 assailants, maybe more, well-trained, coordinated, not here by accident. Rex growled again, low but fierce, as another volley of rounds ripped bark from the fallen trunk. Ethan touched his partner's shoulder. "We move on my count. Stay low." The dog's tense stillness was his answer. Ethan waited for a pause in the gunfire, a beat, a breath. Then he pushed off, sprinting through the underbrush, with Rex glued to his side. Bullets chased them through the darkness, snapping branches, kicking soil. Ethan zigzagged, using terrain as cover, every instinct sharpened to a razor's edge. One thought cut through everything. If they want me dead, fine. But they're not getting her. He slid down a steep ravine, grabbing onto roots to keep from tumbling. Rex leapt after him, landing with silent precision. The gunfire behind them faded slightly, replaced by shouted commands in a language Ethan recognized but wished he didn't. Mercenaries. The same group he had crossed paths with years ago. Men who had lost comrades to his rifle. Men who did not forgive. Ethan ducked behind a cluster of boulders, chest heaving, smoke still clinging to his clothes. Rex pressed close, trembling with adrenaline, but unbroken. Ethan ran a hand over the dog's head, grounding himself. The forest was silent again, not peaceful this time, but predatory. They were alive, barely, and the night had only begun. Ethan drew a slow breath, steadying his mind. They knew our position. That means the leak is real, and if they want to keep Emma hidden, they'll tighten their perimeter after this. He looked toward the black stretch of forest where the mercenaries had come from. Firelight was gone, their camp destroyed, their safety burned away. "Rex," he whispered, voice unwavering, "we continue the mission." And with the moon rising pale and cold above the treetops, Ethan Walker stepped deeper into the darkness, toward the enemy who had already marked him for death, and toward the woman he refused to abandon. Mist lingered over the forest floor as the last trace of the ambush faded into a cold, predatory silence. Ethan Walker moved through the darkness with Rex close at his side, both shaken yet sharpened by the violence of the previous hour. The campsite that had been their shelter was now a charred imprint on the ground behind them, and Ethan felt its absence like a phantom weight pressing against his ribs. He could still smell the burned pine and explosives clinging to the inside of his lungs. It reminded him of another night, years ago, when a reconnaissance team he led overseas was attacked under similar circumstances. He had survived then, but only because Rex, back when he was still a fresh K-9 trainee, had sensed danger early. Tonight was a cruel echo of that memory, too precise to be coincidence. Someone knew how he worked. Someone knew how to hunt him. Ethan crouched near a broken tree trunk, letting his breathing steady. He pressed 2 fingers into the damp soil, feeling for vibrations, searching for clues. The ground itself seemed troubled, as if disturbed recently by hurried footsteps. Rex sniffed forward, his nose dipping toward patches of scorched earth and scattered pine needles. The dog's posture held a tension Ethan recognized, the readiness of a creature who had witnessed too much and survived because instinct became a shield stronger than armor. "Slow," Ethan murmured. "Let the trail talk first." The forest did talk, subtly, quietly, in a way only practiced trackers could hear. Faint depressions in the soil revealed the direction of the attackers, northwest, toward terrain narrowing into a natural corridor. Mixed among them, nearly erased but still traceable, were lighter tracks, smaller, hesitant, not made by a soldier. He felt a pull in his chest. "Emma," he whispered. Rex glanced up as if confirming the same conclusion. The attackers had moved fast, dragging their hostage deeper into the mountains. The ambush wasn't random. It was staged to eliminate Ethan before he ever reached their hideout. That meant the leak within his mission briefing was deeper than he feared. Continuing through the trees, Ethan scanned the forest for unusual markings. A scrap of fabric caught on a thorn bush drew his attention. He plucked it free and held it to the dim moonlight. Soft, gray-blue, a color he remembered from a humanitarian jacket Emma once wore at a refugee camp he had protected during a desert operation years ago. She had carried a quiet steadiness that made her memorable despite the chaos around them. The fact that a scrap of her clothing was here meant she had fought back, even in small ways. The fact that it was dappled with dried blood meant time was running out. "We're close," Ethan said. But closeness meant danger, and the next steps had to be taken with precision. He pressed onward, using every ounce of his sniper training to anticipate the mercenaries' movements. This wasn't just a chase. It was a contest of intelligence. Their leader, whoever he was, understood the terrain, knew how to scatter false trails, and had the cold discipline of someone used to commanding others through fear. As Ethan and Rex followed the tracks through denser woods, they heard rustling ahead, not the kind made by wind or wildlife. Controlled movements, 2 silhouettes emerged through the trees, their outlines rigid and disciplined. Mercenaries, not amateurs, but veterans hardened by years of conflict. One carried a suppressed rifle and scanned the perimeter with a methodical calm. The other checked something on a wrist-mounted device, a jammer unit, designed to distort communication signals. That explained the complete blackout during the ambush. Their presence confirmed Ethan's fear. The enemy intended to seal off every escape route, isolating him long enough to eliminate him. 2 targets, Ethan breathed. Pattern sweeping. They're securing the rear trail. He assessed the terrain. A fallen log near the edge of a small ravine offered cover. The distance between him and them was perfect for a clean, silent elimination. But he hesitated. Not because he feared confrontation, Ethan had faced worse, but because a nagging thought kept pulling at him. Where was the rest of their unit? Why would only 2 stay behind? Rex gave a low growl. It wasn't aggression, but warning. Ethan understood. Something was wrong, too easy, too exposed, but withdrawal wasn't an option. If these 2 circled back, they would find the blood at the campsite, the trails, the signs showing Ethan survived. They would tighten the net. He aimed, 1 breath in, 1 breath out. A whisper of metal and air. The first mercenary dropped without a sound. The second spun, reaching for his communicator. But Rex sprang forward in absolute silence and brought him to the ground before Ethan needed a second shot. There was no struggle. Rex held him long enough for Ethan to silence him completely. "Good work," Ethan whispered, giving the dog a quiet nod. Rex's eyes shone with that fierce loyalty shaped by battles past, both shared and survived. Ethan crouched to check the fallen mercenary's device. The jammer unit displayed coordinates, shifting markers indicating movement ahead. A convoy. That had to be Emma. They were transporting her across higher elevation, probably toward a temporary transit point. He memorized the direction. As he stood, he noticed something else, a symbol etched into the mercenary's wrist device, a wolf's head inside a hexagon. Ethan's muscles tightened. He had seen that emblem before, years ago during a covert operation in Eastern Europe, a group known for its brutality, led by a man who operated in the shadows, a man Ethan once believed dead. "So it's you," Ethan whispered, a cold understanding washing through him. The past had caught up in the dark of Sierra Nevada. He looked toward the distant mountains where the coordinates pointed. The trail awaited, but every step forward narrowed the gap between him and enemies who had planned this night long before he set foot here. Rex pressed against his leg, steady and fearless. "We follow them," Ethan said, "but we move carefully. They're expecting me now." And as the forest darkened and a thin layer of snow began to fall, Ethan and Rex slipped into the shadows, stepping deeper into the realm of hunters who believed they had already claimed victory, unaware that the man they sought to kill was drawing closer with every silent breath. And somewhere ahead, Emma's fate hung by a thread, guarded by men who would soon discover that Ethan Walker did not break easily. The night stretched before them like a path of unanswered questions, and one of them glowed the strongest. Why had the wolf's head returned? The forest narrowed into a steep passage of stone and tangled roots as Ethan Walker followed the trail revealed in the mercenary's device. The air had grown colder, pressed down by a creeping fog that clung to the ground like something alive. Rex shifted beside him, ears pricked forward, his breath steady despite the exhaustion already etched into the night. The coordinates pointed toward higher elevation, and Ethan could sense he was moving closer, not only to Emma, but to something far older and darker buried in his past. The symbol of the wolf's head still lingered in his mind, conjuring memories of a mission he had once been ordered to forget. Years ago, during an operation overseas, his team had intercepted intelligence about a private paramilitary syndicate known for operating beyond the boundaries of any law. Their leader had never revealed his name, but he carried a reputation built through terror. Mercenaries who followed him were conditioned through relentless brutality, forged in a regime where failure meant erasure. Ethan's team had raided one of their shipment routes once. The engagement had turned into a bloodbath, and though Ethan survived, several of the Wolf's Head operatives had fallen to his rifle. Word later reached him that the organization dissolved shortly afterward, its members scattered into shadows. Yet here he was, tracing those same shadows through American soil, haunted by the symbol he thought he would never see again. As he pushed deeper into the tightening corridor of trees, Rex stopped, not out of fear, but recognition. The dog lowered his body toward the earth, waiting for Ethan to read the signs ahead. Ethan followed Rex's gaze toward a faint, flickering light in the distance, too steady to be a campfire, too dim to be a flare. The light pulsed like a heartbeat behind a cluster of broken pines. "Stay low," Ethan whispered. Rex complied, moving with silent purpose. They approached the structure slowly, discovering an old cabin wedged between jutting cliff walls. It looked abandoned at first glance, but Ethan knew better. The air tasted of metal, the ground bore footprints too fresh, and there was an unnatural stillness around the place. This had been used recently, likely as a temporary stop for Emma's captors. Ethan whispered a single command to Rex before circling the cabin's perimeter. The dog disappeared behind a fallen tree, positioning himself like a silent guardian. Ethan peered into the nearest window, but the glass was covered from within by dark cloth. The door was shut, yet the lock was damaged as though forced open more than once. Whoever used this cabin did not consider it a home, only a waypoint. He entered with calculated caution. The air inside was thick and cold, tinged with the smell of damp wood and something acrid. His eyes adjusted, revealing a cramped room filled with scattered equipment. Ropes, empty rations, a kettle still warm, and a jamming device similar to the one he had seen earlier, though smaller. On a crate near the back wall lay a set of restraints, thin steel cables meant to secure a prisoner. Ethan's jaw tightened. Emma had been here not long ago. He inspected the floor and spotted faint scuff marks, signs of someone resisting, attempting to pull away or drop their weight. It painted a painful image in his mind, but he forced his thoughts to stay sharp. He needed clarity, not emotion. A low creak sounded behind him. Ethan spun, weapon ready, but the figure who emerged through the back doorway was not armed. It was a man, older, limping slightly, his clothes ragged and smeared with dirt. His face showed exhaustion and a quiet desperation, as though life had not given him mercy in years. He raised his hand slowly. "I'm not your enemy," the man whispered, voice hoarse. "I didn't mean to startle you." Ethan didn't lower his weapon immediately. "Who are you?" The man swallowed hard, eyes flicking toward the floor as if afraid to hold Ethan's stare. "My name is Rowan Hale," he said. "I used to work for them. The men you're chasing, I escaped last night." Ethan studied him carefully. Rowan wasn't lying. His trembling stance carried the weight of someone who had lived long enough under coercion to recognize true fear. "Why were you with them?" Ethan asked. Rowan hesitated, shame crossing his features. "Because they threatened my family. I had skills they needed, logistics, mapping routes, coordinating supply drops. When I saw what they planned to do with the woman they captured, I couldn't keep going." Ethan's pulse sharpened. "Emma Davis. Where is she?" Rowan nodded. "They moved her to the ridge above this cabin, but they won't keep her there long. Their leader, he wants to use her as leverage." Ethan's grip tightened. "Who is leading them?" Rowan took a long breath. "They call him the Warden. He rose from what remained of the Wolf's Head after it fractured. remembers you?" Ethan felt the weight of that name like a cold blade pressed to the back of his neck. The warden was a ghost from that same operation years ago, a strategist known for orchestrating ambushes and psychological warfare. He was someone who turned cruelty into a craft. Rowan continued, "He's unpredictable now, obsessed with something, some message he wants to send through her. She knows something, I think. Something important." Ethan processed the information, his mind assembling pieces like a puzzle he wasn't sure he wanted completed. "Show me their trail," Ethan said. "I will," Rowan replied. "But you need to understand. They know you survived the ambush, and the warden wants you alive long enough to watch him break what you're trying to protect." The words hit deeper than Ethan expected, stirring a familiar dark resolve within him. He motioned for Rowan to lead the way. Outside, Rex reappeared from the shadows, sensing the shift in tension. His stare fixed on Rowan, not hostile, but alert. "He's with us," Ethan said. "For now." Rowan nodded respectfully at the dog, though his voice shook slightly. "I heard stories about military dogs. They say they can sense a man's soul." Ethan didn't respond. Instead, he looked toward the mountain ridge where Rowan pointed, a steep ascent leading to a place where the forest thinned and the rocks rose jagged and threatening. Somewhere up there, Emma waited. Somewhere up there, the warden watched. As a sharp gust of wind whispered down from the ridge, carrying a faint metallic odor, Ethan felt a chill deeper than the cold air. It wasn't fear. It was anticipation, and the knowledge that the next stretch of forest would not only test his skills, but force him to confront everything the wolf's head had once taken from him. Rowan tightened his coat and stepped forward. Rex growled once, then fell into stride. Ethan followed, every sense sharpened. A new question grew louder with every step they took. If the warden had been expecting him from the beginning, what trap waited on that ridge? And what truth was Emma carrying that was worth provoking a ghost from Ethan's past? The ridge rose before them in a long, dark line beneath a shifting sky, the wind cutting across the stone with a thin, sharp whistle that carried warnings more than sound. Ethan Walker advanced with controlled focus, Rex pacing close at his side, while Rowan Hale followed a short distance behind, moving with the shrinking confidence of a man returning to a place he had spent months trying to forget. Ethan paid attention to the trail as it sloped upward into harsher terrain. Every rock felt positioned to cause a slip. Every shadow seemed too still, and the silence was unnaturally heavy. Rowan explained quietly that this ridge had often been used as a transit point for Wolf's Head operatives. They would bring supplies through here at night, hide prisoners temporarily, or wait for extraction. The group avoided leaving identifiable signs, but Rowan admitted their leader encouraged traps more than caution, often preferring psychological dominance over efficiency. Ethan noted how Rowan's voice changed when speaking about the warden. It wasn't fear alone, it was complicated guilt mixed with resignation. Rowan had helped guide caravans through these woods, and though he had not directly harmed Emma, he had still been part of the machine that put her in danger. That conflict lingered in every word he spoke. Ethan didn't judge him. He only needed to know Rowan wouldn't break the moment things turned violent. As they climbed, Rex halted again, lowering his body low to the ground. Ethan read the signal instantly. Something ahead was wrong. Rowan froze too, staring at the path like the stones were whispering back to him. "There's a pressure line up ahead," Rowan murmured. "They use simple triggers. Step on that root, the wire pulls, and you'll hear the mountain before you see it." Ethan inspected the terrain without touching anything. The trap wasn't meant to kill but delay or warn. The warden wanted to control the timeline. They moved around the line cautiously, climbing along a narrow edge of stone. For the next several hundred feet, the landscape grew harsher, shaped by erosion into tall rock pillars that resembled ancient guardians. The gray sky above them seemed lower with every step. Ethan's instinct clawed at him. Something was missing. No guards, no scouts, not even footprints. Rowan noticed Ethan's unease. "He wants you to think there's a path out of this," Rowan whispered. "He does that to break people early." Ethan didn't reply. Instead, he scanned the cliffside. Rex bristled for a moment, but the air didn't hold the scent of ambush. The danger was something else, something quieter. When they reached a clearing, Rowan signaled for them to stop. The clearing was circular, surrounded by jagged rocks and thick clusters of dead brush. At the center, Ethan saw a metal spike hammered deep into the ground, a rope still tied to it. The rope was frayed from resistance. Something heavy had been tied there, likely Emma, and something had forced that rope to break. Rowan knelt beside it, brushing his fingers across the fibers. "She was here not long ago," he said, "but they moved her again. If she freed herself, she would have run toward the lower ridge. If they moved her by force, they would have taken her through the old quarry route." Ethan considered both possibilities. He closed his eyes a moment, focusing on the scent trails around them. Rex stepped close to the ground, nose moving in precise arcs. Then the dog turned sharply, ears rising. He stopped beside the edge of the clearing where a torn piece of fabric lay wedged under a stone, small, light, likely torn during an escape attempt. Emma. The direction of the scent suggested she had gone downhill alone. Ethan felt the weight of that discovery ripple through him. She had tried to run. That meant she wasn't broken. It also meant the warden didn't have her under full control. Rowan exhaled with some relief. If she ran, she might still be alive. He hates when prisoners escape. He makes examples of them. Ethan didn't break focus. "If she ran, they'll track her," he said. "And if they track her, they're close." He signaled for movement. They descended from the clearing into thicker trees where the ground dipped into a narrow funnel of rock. Rex's ears twitched. Ethan sensed the shift too. The air pressure changed, carrying vibrations from footsteps. Many footsteps. Rowan stiffened. "They're here," he whispered. Ethan grabbed his arm and pulled him behind a large boulder. Rex took position beside him, silent, but coiled like a spring. Moments later, a small squad of mercenaries appeared between the trees, moving with rigid formation. Their uniforms were mismatched, but their discipline was unmistakable. One of them carried a handheld scanner, sweeping it across the ground. "She ran downhill," one said. "The warden wants her found before night. He said the sniper is close." Another replied, "He wants the sniper alive, said he has unfinished business." Rowan swallowed hard, but Ethan's expression stayed resolute, cold, methodical. The squad continued down the path, unaware of how close they had come. When the last soldier vanished into the fog, Ethan waited a full minute before signaling movement again. Rowan whispered, "If they find her before we do—" "They won't," Ethan answered quietly. "Rex has her trail. That gives us advantage." But Rowan wasn't entirely convinced. "You don't know him," Rowan murmured. "The warden doesn't leave survivors unless he needs them, and when he needs them, the end is worse." Ethan finally turned to face him, and though his voice stayed calm, Rowan felt the weight of something heavy underneath his words. "I've faced him before," Ethan said. "And he didn't break me then. He won't now." Rowan blinked. "He knew your name," he whispered. "Knew you would follow. Knew you wouldn't abandon her." Ethan didn't deny it. The warden always studied patterns in the people he hunted. Long ago, during their first encounter, the warden had miscalculated, assuming Ethan would hesitate. Instead, Ethan took the shot that shattered their operation. Now, it seemed the man had been waiting years to repay that debt. As they moved deeper into the wooded descent, Rex stopped again. The dog's breathing sharpened as he sniffed the moss-covered ground. Then he growled softly and lowered his head. Ethan found what Rex sensed, a faint smear of blood on a rock near the trail, not enough to indicate a critical wound, but enough to confirm Emma had passed through here injured. Rowan's face tightened at the sight. "She was fighting," he said, "or fell." Ethan stood slowly, scanning ahead. The trail curved toward an area shrouded in thicker fog. Nothing moved, yet Ethan felt watched. The sensation crawled across the base of his skull. "We're close," Ethan whispered. Rex remained still, waiting for the next command. Rowan stepped to Ethan's side. "If he's down there," Rowan said quietly, "there's something you should know. The warden, he doesn't face people directly. He makes them walk into whatever torment he set." Ethan answered without turning. "Then let's make sure the trap closes on him instead." They continued down the path, the fog thickening like a curtain, and somewhere far ahead, a voice finally echoed faintly through the trees. A woman's voice, weak, calling for help. Emma. But Ethan felt his stomach tighten instead of relief. The voice was too steady, too perfectly placed in the stillness of the forest. Rex didn't move toward it. He lowered his body and whined in warning. Rowan went pale. Ethan raised his rifle. "It's not her," he said quietly. "It's a lure." And as they approached the edge of a ravine, a shadow shifted behind the fog, too tall, too slow, too deliberate to be an accident. Someone was waiting there, watching, predicting their every move. Mist clung to the ravine like a slow-moving tide, swallowing the shapes of the forest until nothing remained but silhouettes that shifted with the slightest breath of wind. Ethan Walker kept his rifle steady, Rex at his side, Rowan Hale a careful step behind him. The false voice calling from within the fog still echoed faintly like a memory meant to lure instinct rather than reason. The presence Ethan sensed moments ago hadn't moved. Whoever or whatever waited in the haze was watching them with a patience that suggested confidence, not desperation. Ethan motioned for silence. Rex pressed low against the ground, rigid, neither fearful nor uncertain, simply ready. Rowan's breathing grew uneven, not from physical strain, but from the suffocating familiarity of the tactic. "He used this on prisoners," Rowan whispered. "Recordings, voices of people they knew, sometimes their families, anything to break their sense of direction." Ethan didn't respond. He knew psychological warfare when he saw it. But what unsettled him was how specifically the voice had been placed. It had been calibrated to carry just far enough to reach them, but not echo outward. That took knowledge of terrain. It meant the warden, or someone under his command, was very close. A sudden rustle sliced through the fog. Ethan pivoted instantly, finger poised on the trigger, but Rex darted first, leaping ahead before Ethan could stop him. The dog vanished into the mist as if he had jumped into another world. A heartbeat later, a cry burst from the fog. Not Rex, but a man. Ethan rushed forward, Rowan scrambling behind. They found Rex standing over an armed mercenary, pinning the man by driving his weight against the soldier's rifle arm. The mercenary wasn't one of the patrol they had avoided earlier. This one carried heavier gear and a tactical headset more sophisticated than what the lower-ranked soldiers wore. Ethan seized the headset before the man could crush it. The mercenary spat blood and snarled, "He said you'd come this way." Ethan didn't waste time. "Where's Emma?" The mercenary laughed through clenched teeth. "Take one more step down that path and you'll see for yourself." Ethan didn't like the implication, but fear wasn't part of his calculation. "One last chance," he said. "Where is she?" The mercenary stared defiantly. Only when Rex bared his teeth did something crack behind the man's eyes. Not courage breaking, but discipline bending. "Quarry route," he gasped. "They took her to the quarry." Rowan stiffened. He looked at Ethan, fear edging the edges of his voice. "The quarry is a dead zone. He uses it to—" Rowan didn't finish. Ethan didn't need him to. The warden had always preferred open spaces where he could control the field like a chessboard. Ethan struck the mercenary across the temple with the rifle stock, knocking him unconscious. He didn't kill him. Dead soldiers couldn't answer future questions. They pressed forward. The mist thinned with each step as the ravine widened into a long rock corridor, carved by nature but shaped by human intention. Scattered debris lined the path, broken branches, scuffed dirt, scattered pebbles, all pointing to signs of a struggle. Then they found the first clear sign, a torn restraint cable caught against a root. Rowan examined it. "She broke free again," he murmured, disbelief flickering in his tired eyes. "She keeps doing that." Ethan allowed himself the faintest sliver of respect for the woman he had yet to meet. Survival was a choice, and she had chosen it repeatedly. Rex picked up the scent again and took off downhill, forcing Ethan and Rowan to keep pace. When the fog finally peeled away, it revealed the quarry, a sunken bowl of stone surrounded by jagged walls with the remains of abandoned mining structures rusting at its edges. And at the center stood a wooden platform. Ethan froze. Emma Davis was there, struggling against fresh restraints that bound her to a support beam. Not far from her, a tall, dark-coated figure stood with his hands behind his back. He didn't raise a weapon. He didn't call out. He merely watched Ethan arrive as though he had been expecting a long-delayed guest. Rowan trembled. "It's him," he whispered. "The warden." The warden's posture radiated a calm menace, the kind shaped not by brute strength, but by the absolute certainty that he held the advantage. A second figure emerged beside him, someone Ethan hadn't expected. A younger man, late 20s maybe, face shadowed by grime, but his stance carried something familiar. The man stared at Ethan with attention that was neither hostility nor loyalty. The warden lifted a hand slightly as if introducing him. "This," he said, voice echoing faintly across the quarry, "is Hunter Vale." Rowan gasped softly. Ethan remained still. The name wasn't familiar until Rowan whispered, "He's one of the defectors. He's the one who designed escape routes. He knows this mountain better than any of us." Hunter Vale's eyes flicked between Ethan, Rex, and Emma as though trying to measure the consequences of a choice he hadn't made yet. He didn't appear fully committed to either side. Ethan read hesitation in him, and hesitation meant opportunity. The warden spoke again, his voice flat and controlled. "I assume you enjoyed the trail I left. You always were predictable, Walker." Ethan kept his weapon down but ready. "Let her go." The warden tilted his head slightly. "She has something I want, and now that you're here, I have something you want. That puts us in a position of mutual inconvenience, doesn't it?" Rex snarled, sensing the shift in Ethan's breathing. Rowan whispered, "He's stalling. He will move her the moment he gets what he wants." The warden continued, "I brought you here because I need you to witness something. The wolf's head fell because of you. Men died because of you. So you will watch as I take something from you in return." Ethan didn't let rage cloud him. He scanned the terrain instead, the angles, the distances, the potential cover points. He counted the shadows. He noted where Rex was best positioned for a strike. Hunter Vale watched him closely, and in that brief exchange of glances, Ethan saw conflict, maybe even regret. The warden didn't see it. He only saw his own reflection in the power he thought he possessed. "Come closer, Walker," the warden said. "Come see what your interference has cost." Ethan took one step forward. Only one. The warden smirked at the resistance, but before he could speak again, the wind shifted. Rex's entire body stiffened. Rowan whispered, "Someone else is here." And then Ethan saw it too, a faint movement atop the highest quarry ledge, a silhouette, a rifle, not pointed at him, pointed at Emma. The warden smiled. "Your move, Walker." Ethan raised his rifle. Rex lowered for a spring. Rowan held his breath. The chapter closed with Ethan realizing he had only seconds to save Emma from a sniper positioned above. Seconds to take a shot that could either save her life or give the warden exactly the chaos he wanted. A dim veil of dust drifted across the quarry floor as the wind shifted, carrying with it the metallic scent of tension that thickened the air. Ethan Walker held his breath, his rifle aligned with the shadow perched atop the highest ledge. Rex's muscles hardened with instinct beside him, ready to spring without hesitation. Rowan Hale crouched low, fear mixing with determination as he realized one mistake could mean Emma's life. The sniper on the ridge didn't move. His silhouette remained perfectly centered, as if he had become part of the stone itself. Ethan recognized the stillness immediately. It wasn't the stillness of a rookie. It was the kind earned through long years of battlefield detachment. This was someone trained, someone conditioned for absolute patience. The warden's voice cut through the silence, steady and calm. "You were always quick to assess a threat, Walker, but speed alone won't save her now." Ethan ignored him, calculating angles in his mind. Distance, wind drag, surface drift, elevation drop. The sniper had the height advantage, and if Ethan fired too slow or too early, Emma would be the first to fall. Rex let out a low whine, urging him forward, not to attack, but to decide. Rowan whispered, "If you shoot from this angle, you'll be off by inches. You need a cleaner line." Ethan knew, but to get that line, he had to move into open ground, where the warden wanted him. Ethan stepped forward anyway. The warden watched with a faint smile, one that carried arrogance rather than victory. "You have a choice," the warden said. "Save her or save yourself." Ethan didn't reply. He didn't waste time arguing with a man who had built his entire existence on torment. Instead, He whispered a single word to Rex. Now. Rex burst forward, not toward the warden or the mercenaries, but toward the rusted mining scaffolds that lined the quarry's edge. The structure rattled under the dog's weight, drawing the sniper's aim instinctively downward. In that instant of adjustment, one heartbeat shaved from certainty, Ethan moved. Not straight, not predictable. A sharp pivot to the left, creating a firing arc that the sniper hadn't prepared for. The warden's eyes widened. Walker! Ethan fired first. The sniper's silhouette jerked back, knocked from the ridge by a clean, precise shot that sent him tumbling down the rock face in a trail of dust. The warden's composure cracked. Ethan didn't pause. He sprinted toward Emma, while Rex redirected, launching himself toward one of the armed guards who tried to intercept. Rowan followed, but stopped abruptly when a mercenary blocked his path. Rowan hesitated, but only for a moment. Then, fueled by guilt and something deeper, he rammed the man with a force that shocked even Ethan, grappling to keep him down. Ethan reached Emma and cut through the restraints. Her voice trembled. "You're Ethan Walker." He gave a short nod. "Can you run?" She nodded weakly. "I can." The warden wasn't fleeing. He wasn't firing. He was watching, calculating. He stepped forward with the stillness of someone who had planned for every variable. "You think you've won," he said, "but you never understood the real message." Ethan positioned himself between the warden and Emma, rifle up. The warden lifted his hand. Behind him, Hunter Vale stepped forward, not with a weapon drawn, but with uncertainty burning in his eyes. "Hunter," the warden said, "do what you were trained to do." Hunter froze. Ethan watched him closely, seeing a fracture in the young man's resolve. The warden mistook that silence for obedience. "End this." Hunter turned, not toward Ethan, but toward the warden. "No," Hunter said quietly. "I'm done doing your killing." The warden's calm slipped. "You forget who made you?" Hunter met his gaze. "No. I remember too well." The warden lunged for Hunter's weapon, but Ethan fired before the man's hand reached the grip. The shot tore through the dirt beside the warden's foot, a warning, but the warden didn't retreat. He grabbed a fallen blade instead and charged toward Ethan with a ferocity born of obsession. Ethan countered with brutal efficiency, knocking the blade aside and driving his elbow into the warden's sternum. The man staggered but didn't fall. He struck again, wild but sharp. Years of violence had stripped him of fear, but Ethan wasn't driven by fear. He was driven by purpose, and purpose won. With a final strike, Ethan forced the warden to the ground. The man wheezed, a bitter laugh slipping from his lips. "You can stop me," he rasped, "but you can't stop what she knows." Ethan didn't let him finish. He cuffed him with the restraints that once held Emma, and for the first time, the warden's eyes shifted, not in fear, but in recognition of a defeat he had never imagined. Rex returned, bloodied but uninjured, standing guard over the last fallen mercenary. Rowan limped toward them, clutching his shoulder. "It's over?" Ethan exhaled. "Here, yes." Emma steadied herself against a support beam. "There's something you need to see," she whispered. "Something I was carrying when they took me." She revealed a small encrypted drive hidden beneath her torn sleeve, wrapped in fabric to muffle its outline. "This contains evidence," she said. "A network, names, places, people funding all of this." Ethan sensed the weight of what she was saying. The mission wasn't just a rescue. It was the first step in dismantling something much larger. Rowan stared at the drive as if it were a ghost. "Then he wasn't trying to ransom you," Rowan said. He was trying to silence you." Ethan nodded. "And now we make sure he fails." They began the long ascent out of the quarry, Rex leading the way with a steady resolve that never once dimmed. Behind them, the warden, once the architect of fear, now sat bound in the ruins of his own designs. The first touch of dawn brushed across the cliff tops as Ethan, Emma, Rowan, and Rex emerged from the darkness. The air felt different, lighter, as if the mountain itself finally released a breath it had been holding for too long. But deep inside, Ethan knew this was not the end of the story. It was the beginning of a larger war waiting in the shadows, and he would be ready. When Ethan, Emma, Rowan, and Rex stepped out of the quarry as the first light of dawn brushed the mountains, it wasn't just the end of a rescue. It was a reminder that even in the darkest corners of this world, a flicker of hope can break through when we least expect it. Some people call it luck. Others call it instinct. But many, especially those of us who have lived through the storms of life, know it as something deeper, a quiet miracle, a whisper from God that we are not walking alone. Ethan believed he entered that mountain as a soldier, relying only on skill, discipline, and courage. But he left knowing that something greater had guided every step, bringing him to Emma just in time, stirring courage in Rowan's broken spirit, and protecting Rex in moments where death stood inches away. And perhaps that is the message for all of us today. God still works through ordinary people in extraordinary moments, through those who stand up against evil, through those who protect the innocent, through those who choose compassion over fear, or sometimes through a loyal dog who refuses to give up. In our daily lives, whether we are facing illness, loneliness, financial struggle, or heartbreak, we often forget that miracles are still happening quietly around us. Sometimes the miracle is protection. Sometimes it is strength. Sometimes it is simply the right person arriving at the right time. And if today's story touched your heart, I invite you to reflect on your own journey. Where did God show up for you? Who was the Ethan or Rex in your life? Or maybe, when were you the answer to someone else's prayer? If this story inspired you, please share it with someone who needs hope today. Leave a comment about a moment when you felt God's hand in your life. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another story of courage, faith, and second chances. May God watch over you, guide your steps, and bless everyone who listens with peace, healing, and protection. God bless you, and may His light follow you wherever you go.